tenses. You will be introduced to quantifiers. You will learn to make requests and offers. We will hone your spoken English, as always, by softening your negative comments. And you will master the use of relative clauses. And as always, we'll finish with a summary, a look ahead at the next lesson, and the question and answers round that we always have at the end of each lesson. So, without further ado, let's begin today's lesson with the past tenses. Now, when do we use the past tense most often? What's a very easy way to look at it? Well, how about look at this question? Where were you born? Okay, that is a past tense question. Where were you born? And it's a question that every single one of us would be able to answer. So, let's look at these people. I was born in Toronto, Canada. Okay, so there we see Canada. We know that it is just north of the United States, and Toronto is the capital. So I was born in Toronto, Canada. We see this was, that is of course the past tense of the verb to be. The present, am, are, is. The past tense, we have was and were, okay? Let's look at where some other people were born. I was born in Cairo in 1998. Okay, so where do we think Cairo is? Who can tell me? And I know we have lots and lots of students from this area, so many people should be able to tell me. Cairo is the capital city, of course, of Egypt. Exactly. Oh, and I apologize. Jerome has just pointed out that Toronto is not the capital city of Canada. I apologize, Jerome. I always make that mistake. Toronto is not the capital, it is Ottawa. Okay, so I was born in Cairo in 1998. If you want to add in the year also, you can simply put a comma in and the year. So for example, I was born in Dublin in 1990. Now, what about the next person? My mother was living in London when I was born. And of course, London is in the UK. So look at this sentence. My mother was living in London when I was born. We have two different tenses here. We have the past continuous and the past simple. And we're going to look at those in more detail in just a second. I am from France, but I was actually born in Italy. Okay, so I am from France, but I was actually born in Italy. So there we have the present tense. I am from France, but I was born in Italy. My father and I were born in South Africa. There we have were, and remember that is used when it's a plural. So, my father and I were born in South Africa. It is also used for the pronoun you, which we will see in a little bit. But I was working in China when he was born. Again, we have the past continuous. But I was working in China when he was born. And then we've got our final person. I was born in Sweden, but I live in Germany now. Okay, I was born in Sweden, but I live in Germany now. And guys, the reason I have highlighted all of these places is because knowing the English names for countries and cities is very important for improving your fluency. Okay, you may not think it is important, but using the English names for countries and cities helps your fluency a lot. Okay, so that's why I have added in the flags to help you guys, okay? Now, let's break down these past tenses. So, first we will look at the past simple. And Moataz, I will answer your question now. Moataz is asking, I was or I were, okay? And it is, of course, I was. But look at this, my father and I. Now, it's not saying I were born in Africa, it's saying my father and I, which is, of course, we. Okay, my father and I is just like saying we. So we use were. Okay, my brother and I were born in Dublin. So that was a very good question, Moataz. I should have pointed that out. Now, let's break down the past simple. We use the past simple to talk about a completed past action, fact, or duration of time. Now, the form of the past simple is quite easy. We have the subject, I, you, he, she, the car, the dog, anything, and then our verb plus ed. Now, that is for regular verbs. For regular verbs in the past, we simply add ed. Present tense, I walk. Past tense, I walked. Okay? Now, that is regular verbs. But of course, we do have lots of irregular verbs in English. And unfortunately, the irregular verbs are often the ones we use most. So here are some examples of irregular verbs. To be, to have, to do, go, make, get, take, put, sit, give, feel, say, leave, run. And unfortunately, guys, if you want to know the past tense of all of these verbs, you just have to learn them because there is no simple rules. Okay, we have already seen that the past tense of be is was or were. The past tense of have is had. There is no simple rule. So let's look about examples, let's look at some examples. And I can see Yusuf saying we use the present simple to talk about facts. Now, wait for the examples here. I watched a movie yesterday. The past tense of watch, add an ed. I watched a movie yesterday. So that is a completed past action. Jenny was a quiet child. Okay, that is a past fact. Okay, so do you understand now, Yusuf? It is a fact, but it's a fact from the past. We could not say Jenny is a quiet child because she is not a child anymore. So Jenny was a quiet child. They stayed at the beach all day. Okay, a past duration of time. They stayed at the beach all day. They went around the corner. Oh, I apologize. I've got a typo here. There should be a Y there. They went around the corner. My mistake, guys. I am not perfect. Okay. So went is, of course, the past tense of the verb go. Now, what about negatives and questions? So just like the present simple, we need to bring in the auxiliary verb do. Now, because it's in the past, we put the auxiliary verb in the past. So the past tense of do is, of course, did, guys. So I did not watch a movie yesterday. Now, the main thing to remember here, guys, I watched a movie yesterday, ed. I did not watch a movie yesterday. In the negative and the question, we stay in the infinitive of the verb. The easiest way to remember is that only one verb takes the past tense. And in these cases, it's the auxiliary, do. So if your auxiliary verb is in the past tense, you do not need to put your action verb in the past tense. Jenny wasn't a quiet child, as many of you, Latrech and Saeed, have already written in. Jenny wasn't a quiet child. Very simple. We just add not. We know with the verb to be, we simply add not. So Jenny was not a quiet child. Now a question. Did they stay at the beach all day? Did they stay at the beach all day? Again, action verb in the infinitive. Where did the dog go? Okay, where did the dog go? So that this was I meant to write the dog here. Okay, the dog went around the corner. Where did the dog go? Infinitive form, not went, go. Okay, guys, that's the most important thing to remember here. Guide is saying the past of the verb be is been. Guide, that is the past participle, okay, or verb tree. So we are not looking at past participles yet. We will look at those in a later lesson. So remember, you always have three versions of different verbs. You have the present tense, the past tense, and the past participle, or some people call them verb 1, verb 2, and verb 3. So for the moment, we're just looking at the past tense, okay? Now, Ludas is saying, could it be, where do the dog went? No, Ludas. Unfortunately, it can be not. Or sorry, it can't. We always have to use did in the past tense when asking a question like this. It has to be the auxiliary that is in the past tense, okay? So a good question, but no, we cannot use that. Now, next we're going to look at the past continuous, guys. So, just like we had the present simple and the present continuous last week, we now have the past simple and the past continuous. So the past continuous is used to talk about something that was happening in the past, an interrupted action or the repetition of an action, okay? So the form of this is very simple. It is the exact same as the present continuous, except our auxiliary verb is in the past. So we have our subject, we have our auxiliary verb to be, and then we have our verb plus ing. So it's the exact same as the present continuous, except be is in the past. So it's was or were, okay? Now let's look at some examples of this. Mark was teaching in Dammam while he was in Saudi. So something that was happening in the past. Mark was teaching in Dammam while he was in Saudi. So something that happened in the past, a parallel action. I was listening to my iPod when he called. And that is, of course, an interrupted action. I was listening to my iPod when he called. And then we've got the repetition of an action. They were always coming to class late. Now, we most of the time use always in this case because it's the repetition of an action. They were always coming to class late. Okay? Now, one thing I want to point out is this sentence here. I was listening to my iPod when he called. Now, the use of when here. If we have an interrupted action, then we always have the past continuous and the past simple. He called. That is the past, that is the past simple. So an interrupted action will always have both past continuous, past simple. And there are two words that we use all of the time: when and while. Okay? So for an interrupted action, we say present continuous when present simple. If you want to switch the order around and say he called, start the sentence with that, then we use while. He called while I was listening to my iPod. Okay, so it's a little thing to note, the difference between when and while in those mixed sentences. Now let's look at some negatives and questions. Mark wasn't teaching in Riyadh while he was in Saudi. Exact same as the present continuous, we just add not after the verb to be. Mark was not teaching in Riyadh while he was in Saudi. Was I listening to my iPod when you called? Okay, question form. Was I listening to my iPod when you called? Were they always coming to class late? Okay, very simple. Just start the question with your auxiliary verb as we learned last week. I was listening. Was I listening? They were always coming. Were they always coming? Okay, so we just start the sentence with our auxiliary verb. Now, just like when we looked at the present tenses, I always find the students need to visualize this to fully understand it. So let's look at our timeline again. And we have the past, present, and future, just like we did last week. Now let's look at where the past simple fits onto this. So first of all, we have a completed past action or something that was true. Okay, so a completed past action or something that was true. Then we've also got repetition of a past action. So we can see it happened then, and then. Repetition of a past action. Now let's look at the past continuous. And we use that for something that was happening in the past. So something that was happening for a period in the past. And often it is interrupted by the past simple. An interrupted action from the past, okay? So that is how they would fit onto the timeline. Now, a question to see who's still with me, guys. Which of these sentences is correct? Does Mark drive to work yesterday? Did Mark drove to work yesterday? Does Mark drove to work yesterday? Do Mark drive to work yesterday? Did Mark drive to work yesterday? So which of those is a correct use of the past tense, guys? So this is the simple past, and I want to know which is correct. Lots of wrong answers came in first, but it is, of course, number 5. So good work, Sarah, Khalid, Ahmed, Mahmoud, Amini, Jassim, Maya, Widat, Martaz. Very good work. So be careful, guys. A lot of people wrote number 2 before they saw this option. Why is it not number 2? We've got did, Mark, drove. Drove is the past tense of drive. Because this is a question, we do not use it. We say, did Mark drive? Remember, we only want our auxiliary verb in the past tense. Did Mark drive? That's in the infinitive. So good work to everyone who got that one right. I know a lot of people are still typing in, and a lot of people got that once they saw it. So guys, let's move on from tenses now and look at some quantifiers. Now, let's not worry about what quantifiers are right now. Let's look at a conversation. So, could I have some cake? Of course. How much? Just a little, please. No problem, I have a lot. Okay, so this guy has a lot of cake, and it's no problem that Mr. A here wants some cake. Now, let's look at some of the words we've used here. Can I have some cake? Of course. How much? Just a little, please. No problem, I have a lot. Now, what types of words are these? They are quantifiers, okay? They tell us about an amount of something. But before we start, can you count it? Okay, so we know that nouns are split into 2 categories. We have countable nouns and uncountable nouns. So before we look at which quantifiers we can use, let's make sure we know the difference between countable and uncountable nouns. So, countable nouns are nouns that, very simply, can be counted. For example, a book, an idea, a dog, a city, a team. Okay? These can be counted. 1 book, 2 books, 3 books, 4 books. 1 idea, 2 ideas. Okay? Countable nouns have plural forms. Dog, dogs. City, cities. Team, teams. Okay? So countable nouns, things that can be counted. Now, a quick reminder of what uncountable nouns are. Water, information, sugar, oxygen, money, time. Okay, they are examples of uncountable nouns. If you are unsure, like I said, try and count it. We cannot have 1 water, 2 waters, 3 waters. There is no plural of the word water. The same with all of these, okay? But remember, we can use countable nouns to measure uncountable nouns. For example, a bottle of water, 1 piece of information, 2 bags of sugar, 3 liters of oxygen. Okay, so we use countable nouns to count uncountable nouns. We cannot count water, but we can count bottles. Okay, we cannot count information, but we can count pieces of information, and so forth. Now, what about money? Okay, we know we can't have 1 money or 2 money, so that is where currency comes in. 1 euro, 2 euro, 1 real, 2 reals, or $4. Okay, $1, $2, $3. That is how we count money, by using the currency, whether it's euros, pounds, yen, whatever currency it is. And it is the same with time. How can we measure time? Well, we've got seconds, minutes, hours, okay? They are all countable. So 5 minutes, for example. Now, let's look at some examples of using quantifiers with these. How many cars have you got? So many is a quantifier, and that is with a countable noun. How many cars? What about with uncountables? How much salt did you use? How much? That is also a quantifier. And straight away, there is a difference between countable and uncountable. We use many with countable nouns and much with uncountable nouns. Lisa is asking, can we say an information? No, Lisa, we would not say an information because we don't, it's uncountable. So you do not use articles with uncountable nouns, just like you would not say a water or a sugar, okay? Uncountable nouns do not use articles. Do you have many classes? So there's a question. Do you have many classes using our quantifiers? I can't sleep because I drank too much coffee. Coffee is uncountable, okay? A good rule of thumb, if it's a liquid, a powder, or a gas, then it is usually uncountable. So, now we know the difference between countable and uncountable. Let's look at our quantifiers. So what are they? They're used to give information about the quantity of something, i.e. how many or how much, okay? So they are the most common quantifiers. How many for countable, how much for uncountable. Now, let's look at our countable quantifiers, and there is a lot of them, guys. And I see many people in Noka and lots of other people writing in some already, Samar and so forth, sorry. So, countable quantifiers, we have many, a large number of, a number of, numerous, both, a couple of, each, every, either, neither, a few, fewer, and several. Now, let's look at uncountable quantifiers, and there is a lot less. Much, a bit, a little, and quite. Okay, and I have people asking what IE stands for. IE means further information, okay? IE is what we use, it means that is to say. So used to give information about the quantity of something. That is to say how many or how much, okay? Now, there are also quantifiers that can be used for both countable and uncountable. Sarah, IE is a Latin abbreviation, and we will cover it in lesson 7 when we look at written English, okay, and abbreviations. So yes, Anoka, there are many that we can use for both countable and uncountable. We have all, any, enough, less, a lot of, more, most, no, none of, some, quite, very, to, and so. Okay? So let's look at these in some examples. And we'll look at countable ones first. We have a large number of computers in the office. The company has several new courses. Now let's look at some uncountable ones. I have little interest in the class. We made quite a bit of money last year. Now, make sure to be paying attention to the nouns here, guys. Interest, money, computers, courses, and pay attention to when they're countable or uncountable. And finally, I teach a lot of classes. Could you pour me some cola? Okay, so they are examples of a countable and an uncountable one. Now, Adeline is asking, does it mean that when I want to know the price of something, I will use the word how many instead of how much? Not necessarily, Adeline, because we know in spoken English, how much just means what price is it? Because you are asking how much money, okay? How much money? If you wanted to know euros or dollars, you would say how many dollars is it? Because dollars are countable. But when we're talking about money, it's just how much. And we all know in conversation, how much just means how much does it cost. Okay? So I hope that answers your question. Yes, Karen, money is uncountable. Yusuf, it is an idea. So Yusuf is asking if it's an idea or a idea. It is, of course, an idea. And we will cover that in a later lesson. Okay. No, Ibrahim, classes are countable. It is a plural word, es. If a word is plural, that means it is countable. Okay? So let's have a look at a question, guys. Which of these is not a quantifier? Few, quite a lot of, a little bit, good, so many. So which of these, guys, is not a quantifier? And the first person I saw the correct answer was Mahmoud with number 4. It is, of course, good. Good is an adjective and not a quantifier. So well done, everyone. I don't think anyone got that. Oh, I see one wrong answer. I see one wrong answer. I won't name any names, but almost everyone got that one correct. Now, guys, now that we've covered the quantifiers, it leads us into our next section, requests and offers. Now, what are requests and offers? A request is when you ask for something, and an offer is when you want to give someone something, or when you want to help someone. So you've got a request and an offer. A request is if you need help. An offer is if you are giving help. Now, these are very important, and let's look at this first. Can you pass me a few chips, please? Now, chips or French fries, as we say. So, always remember that chips in Ireland and England means French fries. It doesn't mean potato chips like it does in America. Now, let's look at the main thing we're using in this request. And it is, of course, the modal verb can. So, for requests and offers, we bring in modal verbs. And we have seen modal verbs before. These are a type of auxiliary verb used to add more meaning to the verb. So, modal verbs are just like auxiliary verbs, and they're used to add more meaning to the verb. So, let's start off with requests. And let's look at one of the modals we use, can. Can I have some more rice? And guys, look at these sentences. Use your quantifiers, okay? Your quantifiers make it more polite and more fluent. Can I have some more rice? If you say, can I have rice? That can sound quite rude, okay? Guys, I will answer that in a second. So you're asking about can or could, okay? Can we watch the movie in your house? Can you hold the door for me, please? Now, next up, we've got could. Could I borrow a bit of money? Could you tell me where the train station is, please? Could we meet again tomorrow? Now, most of the time, can and could are used interchangeably, okay? And there is also may. So can, could, and may. So, could I have some more rice is a little bit more polite. Next up, we've got would. And most of the time, you would say, would you mind? Okay, and that is extremely polite. So for example, would you mind picking up a couple of bottles on your way home? And again, notice the quantifiers, a couple. Would you mind picking up a couple of bottles on your way home? We're using the verb mind here. Would you mind? Which means picking, that becomes a gerund. Okay, this turns into a noun like we saw before last week when we add in like or love. Would you mind opening this jar for me? Okay, would you mind opening this jar for me? Or we can also use if. Would you mind if I ate in your car? So they are polite requests, guys, and you can use any of these, but asking for things politely is something that non-native speakers always have trouble with. Now, they have been requests, but what about offers? So look at this. Can I help you? Okay, can I help you? Dahlia, you would not say could you mind? Okay, we would never use could you mind? Okay, we would never use that. So, can I help you? That is an offer, okay guys? It's no longer a request, it's an offer. You are offering help. And again, let's start with can. Can I give you a hand? Can I get you a drink? Can I take your jacket? So, if someone is a guest in your house, you can offer them things like this. Can I give you a hand? That just means, can I help you? Okay? Give you a hand is a phrase we use and it means, can I help you? So, can I give you a hand? Can I get you a drink? Can I take your jacket? Now, what about shall? Shall I open the window for you? Shall I make a pot of tea? Shall I show you where the shop is? Okay. Now, shall is more formal than can. Shall is more formal than can. And when we use shall, it really means, would you like me to? Okay. Would you like me to open the window for you? Would you like me to make a pot of tea? Okay, so shall is very formal and we don't use it in spoken English very often. Saeed asking what a pot is. So a pot is what we would fill with tea. If you make tea for a room of people, you would have it in a pot. So a ceramic teapot, okay? And then the last one we are going to look at is would. Would you like something to drink? Would you like any more food? Would you like me to help you with that? So when we use would, we always say, would you like? Okay? Would you like something to drink? Would you like any more food? Would you like me to help you with that? And guys, don't forget that we can also ask these in a more colloquial way. Now, colloquial means how we speak, okay? A lot of this is quite formal, especially shall. So, colloquial is how we speak in real life to each other. And many people would say, how about some coffee? So I welcome you into my house. Hi, how are you? How has your day been? Would you like some coffee? Okay, would you like some tea? Or what people would say most often is, hi, how are you? How about some coffee? How about some food? Okay, how about some dates? Whatever it is that you are offering. That would be a very colloquial way to make an offer. How about some coffee? Now, what about responses to these, guys? So let's look at positive responses. Yes, please. Okay, very simple. Yes, please. That's the easiest way to answer. Or no, thank you would be the opposite. That would be lovely. Okay, so sometimes you don't even need to say yes. Okay, so imagine this. Would you like any more food? That would be lovely, thanks. So you don't even have to say yes or no. I'd love that. So how about some coffee? I'd love that, thanks. If you wouldn't mind, okay? So that is extremely polite. Can I get you a drink? If you wouldn't mind. Or very simply, thanks, that would be great. Thanks, that would be great. Okay, so there are excellent ways to answer questions. Mohammed is saying, yes, that is very kind of you. Okay, that's also a great way to answer. A very good way to answer. Now, what about saying no? And remember, we want to be polite, guys. No thanks. It's okay, I can do it. Okay? So, shall I open the window for you? It's okay, I can do it. Or, can I give you a hand? It's okay, I can do it. You're not even saying no. Don't worry, I'll do it. I'm fine, thanks. Okay? So, although this doesn't seem to fit the question, can I give you a hand? I'm fine, thanks. It means I'm doing fine. I don't need any help. I'm fine, thanks. So they are very nice replies to these offers. Okay, guys? So they are very worth learning and getting used to. Now, which of these sentences is correct, guys? Would you mind get me a glass of water? Oh, sorry, just would you mind get me a glass? Sorry. Would you mind getting me a glass? Would you mind to get me a glass? Would you mind got me a glass? Would you mind gotten me a glass? So which of these sentences is correct? How do we follow would you mind? And exactly, Maria Paul, brilliant work everyone. Mahmoud, Ola, very good Ahmed. It is of course number 2. Would you mind getting me a glass? When we have the verb mind, it's just like or love. We have an ing after it. Would you mind getting me a glass? Well done to everyone who got that one correct. And this leads us into our next section, guys. Softening negative comments. So all of the parts of this lesson are all linked together. So softening negative comments. What do we mean by this? Well, let's introduce you to 2 people. Negative Noel and positive Peter. So negative Noel says, our room is small. Our room is small. But remember, guys, in conversation, we sometimes don't want to sound too negative. So let's look what positive Peter says. Our room isn't very big. So instead of saying our room is small, He says, our room isn't very big. And Noel says, our room's very small. And Peter replies, well, our room's a little small. It is tiny, Peter. Okay, it's quite small. So, what have we been doing here? Positive Peter is softening his negative comments. Instead of just saying our room is small, he's saying, well, our room isn't very big. He is softening the negative comment. Think of it this way. Your son plays for the local football team, and the coach says to you, your son is bad at football. Would you like to hear that? Your son is bad at football? No, because it's very negative. So you can soften that negative comment by saying, your son isn't very good, okay? Or your son isn't great. So there are different ways to soften negative comments to make them less negative, okay? So a tip we use is to use quantifiers and positive words to soften these statements. So let's look at some of negative Noel's statements. Exactly, Khalid. Negative Noel sees the glass half empty. Positive Peter sees it half full. So, exactly, Samara, it's not polite. So, let's say, Noel says it was expensive. So, what could Peter say? It was a little expensive. Okay, so just by adding in a quantifier, it softens that whole comment. It was expensive. It was a little expensive. They are rude. Okay, now, rude is the opposite of polite. So, they are rude. Now, let's see what Peter says. They are not very friendly. Okay, so you can change the word. If you don't want to use rude, you can use a positive word like friendly and have not. They're not very friendly. So that sounds a lot better than they are rude. I earn very little. I don't earn much. The weather was terrible. Well, the weather wasn't great, okay? It wasn't great. We were late landing. We were a bit late landing. So, quantifiers not only tell us about the amount of something, but they can also soften negative comments. And this is all to do with sounding polite in your spoken English, guys. So if you can master the use of these, then it will really improve your fluency.